Do you know what actually happens inside your computer when you double-click a program, run a command, or simply connect to the internet? Well, if the answer is no, you'll never fully understand hacking. That's because most of the system-based attacks you'll encounter in your life, whether that's deploying malware or escalating privileges, all depend on how operating systems actually work. So if you don't understand that, you'll just be a script kiddie following tutorials blindly. That's why in this video, we'll take a look at everything from what happens when you run something on your computer, to what things like a process or permissions really mean, and how understanding all this will make everything else in hacking systems much easier. So let's get started.
Disclaimer.
The following content is for cybersecurity enthusiasts and is for educational or awareness purposes only. It does not provide step-by-step instructions on how to perform attacks, but rather explains the concepts behind how operating systems work. Black hat hacking is highly discouraged and can result in serious legal consequences.
Chapter number 1, How Programs Come to Life.
Okay, so starting with the basics, before you can call yourself a hacker, you first need to understand what your operating system does behind the scenes when you run something on your computer. So when you double-click a program, your operating system first runs something called a loader, which is basically a part of your system that takes a file from your hard drive and turns it into a running program in your memory. To do this, it first reads that program's headers, which is really just a small section at the top of every program that tells the loader what kind of file it is, and what it needs to run properly. So once the loader has this information, it then allocates a chunk of memory in your RAM to that program, copies its code into that memory, and then loads any extra files that program depends on, which are called DLLs on Windows and shared libraries on Linux. But once everything is loaded and ready to go, the loader finally hands over control to the program, and from there, it's officially running. Now if we want to see all of this happening in real time, we can use a tool called Process Explorer, which is basically a more advanced version of Task Manager that lets you see everything behind the scenes. So here I have Process Explorer open, and if I open up Notepad right now, you can see it just appeared in this list, which means it's now loaded and running in memory. Now if I click on it and head over to the DLLs tab here, you can see all of the DLL files that got loaded with Notepad, which is exactly what we just talked about. Now the reason why knowing this matters for hackers is because every step in loading a program is a potential point where things can be manipulated. So for example, a hacker can plant a malicious DLL file with the same name in a folder the loader checks, and the program will load the hacker's DLL instead of the real one. This technique is called a DLL hijacking attack, and it's one of the most common ways malware gets executed on a system, while running behind a legitimate program to avoid basic antivirus detection. Moving on, there's one more thing you need to understand, which is that the moment a program starts running in your memory, it's not really called a program anymore, it's called a process, and this is exactly why the tool we just used is called Process Explorer. Now an interesting thing about processes is that once a program is up and running, it can actually create multiple processes at the same time. So for example, if I open up Google Chrome here, you can see that there are now multiple Chrome processes running under the main Chrome.exe process, even though I only opened Chrome once, and that's because Chrome runs different parts of the browser, like graphics, networking, and background services, as separate processes for security and stability, so that if one part crashes or gets compromised, the rest of the browser keeps running. But there's an even more interesting thing to note here, which is that Chrome didn't actually start itself when I double-clicked it. It was spawned by another program called Explorer.exe, which is the part of Windows that handles your desktop and taskbar. So every program you run from your desktop or taskbar is executed as something called a child process of Explorer.exe, and that's why all of these other programs you see here are nested under Explorer.exe like a tree. Now the reason why this matters for hackers is because this parent-child relationship between processes is how malware analysts spot suspicious activity. So for example, if a malware analyst sees a Microsoft Word document spawning PowerShell as its child process, that's an immediate red flag, because Word has no legitimate reason to be launching PowerShell. On the flip side, attackers who understand how defenders think can go to great lengths to disguise their malware, and if you're interested in learning more about how malware actually works or how analysts study it in detail, I'd highly recommend watching this video by clicking on the I button above.
Chapter number 2, User Mode versus Kernel Mode.
Okay, so now that we know what actually happens when you run something on your computer and how multiple processes work, there's one more thing you need to know, which is that even when a program is running, it isn't allowed to do whatever it wants. You see, every process on Windows runs as a specific user, and that user's permissions decide what that process can and can't do, which is why if you try to do things like install drivers or modify system files, Windows blocks you with a pop-up asking for admin permissions first. But here's the thing, these user permissions are actually just the surface. Underneath them, your CPU itself runs in two completely separate modes, with one being the user mode and the other being the kernel mode. The user mode is where all your everyday programs live, like Chrome or Notepad, but the kernel mode is where your operating system itself runs, and it has complete control over all your computer's hardware. So whenever your program needs to do something it isn't allowed to do directly, it has to first ask the operating system through something called a system call, and your operating system then checks whether your program is actually allowed to do that or not. Now the reason why knowing all of this matters for hackers is because permissions are basically the entire game in offensive security. You see, when a hacker first breaks into a system, they almost always find themselves with regular user permissions, which heavily limits what they can and can't do. So one of their first goals is to find a way to escalate their privileges, which basically involves tricking the system into giving them a higher level access than what they already have. This technique is called privilege escalation, and it's fundamental to almost every hacking scenario, whether it's a CTF, a pentest, or a real-world attack. Apart from this, the kernel mode itself is also a huge target for hackers, because malware that runs in kernel mode has the ability to hide itself from basic antivirus tools that run in user mode, and this is exactly how rootkits work, which are some of the deepest and most dangerous types of malware out there. Now while modern security tools like Windows Defender actually have multiple protections in place to detect rootkits, advanced rootkits still try to bypass them by tampering with the system at a deep level. And if you're not sure about how privilege escalation actually works or how rootkits evade detection, I'd highly recommend exploring these topics on your own now that you understand the fundamentals.
Chapter number 3, How Your Computer Talks to the World.
Okay, so now that we know how programs run on your computer and what they're allowed to do, there's one last thing you need to understand, which is how your computer actually communicates with the rest of the world over the internet. You see, every time you open a website on your browser opens multiple connections to the outside world behind the scenes, like youtube.com for loading the website, YT-image for loading thumbnails, or Google Video for grabbing the videos, and each of these connections is assigned something called a local port number, which is essentially how your operating system keeps track of hundreds of connections without getting them all mixed up. So here in Process Explorer, if I double-click on Chrome and head over to this TCP/IP tab, you can see all of the network connections this single process has open right now, and every one of them has its own port number, helping your operating system keep them separate. Now while most connections on your computer are outbound, like Chrome connecting to YouTube, some processes like Remote Desktop are also inbound, which sit there and wait for incoming connections from the outside world. This is called listening, and it's one of the most important concepts for hackers. That's because the first thing they do after breaking into a system is set up something called a reverse shell, which is basically a process running on the victim's side that opens a connection back to the attacker. Now because this looks like a normal outbound connection from the victim's side, it often slips past firewalls, as they are usually set up to block inbound connections. On the flip side, this is also why defenders constantly monitor network connections on their systems, and if a random process is suddenly making connections to a suspicious IP address, that's a huge red flag that something's wrong. Anyway guys, so that's it for the video. Before ending, I'd like to mention that there's a lot more to operating systems than what we just covered today. So for example, there are logs, which are your operating system's record of everything that happens on your computer, and they're a big deal in hacking because attackers constantly try to delete or tamper with them to cover their tracks, while defenders rely on them to figure out exactly what happened after an attack. Then there's the file system, which is how your operating system stores or organizes everything, and understanding it helps hackers hunt for things after breaking in. Finally, there are services, which are background processes like Windows Update that run without a user being logged in, and they're one of the most common ways malware achieves persistence on a system. So if you're interested in learning more, I'd highly recommend exploring these topics on your own, as they're just as important as the fundamentals we covered today. Speaking of fundamentals, you can also check out my Linux Basics for Hackers series, as Linux is essential to almost anything you'll be doing in hacking, or my digital forensics video, where I walk through how investigators examine a system to figure out exactly what happened after an attack. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments section down below, and I'll see you in the next one.